All right, hello everyone, and welcome back to What They Don't Say.
I won't say the rest of the name. Should I say the rest of the name? Why do I fuck shit up like that? Why do I?
Oh. We're still feeling a little insecure about our intros.
Yeah, it's okay though. This is a process. So, as everybody knows, this is our podcast where we talk about everything between sexual assault, what people don't say. You know, it's all in the title. But something that really needs to be addressed is Lauren has something to share with the class, because last week on our podcast, she was discussing how she really wants the freedom to have sex with people. And I think Lauren was not particularly being honest with us about her true feelings about the man she's in a situationship with. We're just going to dive right in. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Take the stage.
Yeah, I think that we recorded that episode and I was kind of in like a fuck all mindset, and I was like, I think I was trying to like protect myself and also create maybe some sort of like defense mechanism, which I think that people do. And I think this is really important to talk about because I feel like the past few years of my life, I am really guarded with people, and it's really hard for me to trust people or like let them in. And so for me, it's just like easier to kind of shut down or emotionally detach myself so much that I can like actually convince myself that I want one thing to be one way when in reality, it's just a complete fucking lie. And so I think that when we came on the other week and we're like talking about stuff, I was in this mindset of like, well, I just got back from a trip. This guy is like leaving for a really big trip for like,
and you're in a situationship with.
Right. For like months. And so it's kind of just like, yeah, like I don't give a fuck. Like I'm just gonna do whatever the fuck I want. Like I don't care. Like it's all good. Like I was just totally like detaching myself from, I think, what my reality was, and also from the actual emotional connection that I had going on. And I think that's really important to like discuss and have conversations about, because like it's just like really hard. And I think that for me and Shannon, we have experienced something that was like really traumatic and really painful, and kind of our emotional responses to relationships, situationships, just like having sex with people since this happened to us is just kind of like all over the place. And I think that we kind of want to like dive into that kind of stuff and just talk about that a little bit more. Especially since like really recently I experienced myself putting up like a huge wall and like trying to convince myself that like I don't want something, or I'm not attached to someone, and like literally like even like recording that and being like, yeah, like I'm all good, this is fine. But in reality, that's just not what was going on.
Okay, so I feel like you just covered a lot of ground in a really short amount of time. So you're saying that what you said last week was not necessarily true because you were trying to protect yourself from like the real feelings that you might have for this person. And that is a result of you not wanting to be like vulnerable with other people, you being like, I guess just, yeah, afraid to be vulnerable. Like, that's what was going on there? Because it's much easier to be like, oh, I don't care, than to say that you do care.
Yeah, and I think that like, I've done this in the past multiple times where I have acted like someone or something doesn't impact me because I don't want to like give them the power to impact me, when in reality, like they do. And I am emotionally impacted by something, or I am emotionally attached to something, or something does hurt me, or something does make me happy, but I don't want to like give it the time of day for some reason. So I'll just be like, yeah, no, like I don't care. It's fine, like whatever. But it's like that's not how I actually feel. But I do it so much sometimes that I actually convince myself that that is true. And then it doesn't happen till like maybe later or upon like self-reflection where I look back and I'm like, wow, I was so full of fucking shit. Like, what was I doing? Like, why was I saying those things, or why was I acting that way? Like, that's not how I actually felt. Like, what the fuck is like up my asshole? Like, I don't know. Like, it's just.
Well, I think it's just a coping mechanism.
Yeah, it totally is.
Like, like, the truth of the matter is when you're vulnerable with someone, what it means is that you're giving someone the power to hurt you. Like, you're literally, like, giving them yourself, and you're like, hey, here's all of my little secrets, here's everything about me, and please don't hurt it. Like, that's what being vulnerable is with someone,
Right.
especially in, like, a relationship setting.
Right.
And so, once again, you just fully take it away. If you don't actually like them, then you're probably not going to get hurt. At least that's what you tell yourself. But in reality, I think you might hurt more because you were vulnerable with this person. You just didn't want to admit to yourself that, like, the vulnerability was real, if that makes sense. And so, in result, not only are you left with the, like, fuck, I was vulnerable, but you're also left with the, like, I'm not even being honest with myself about how I feel or honest to them about how I feel.
Yeah. Or, like, even honest to friends, you know? Because, like, I said those things to you, too, off the record. And I was, like, I think that you do that to, like, solidify the lie in a way, right? Because you're like, well, if I tell all these other people, then, like, it must be true, right? But it's like, no.
If it's only in your brain, you can convince yourself that it's not true. And until it's said out loud, that's when it becomes real.
Right, exactly. And I think that, like, is totally a product of being hurt. And I think a lot of people have experienced that and have experienced, like, not even, like, trauma pain, but just, like, being heartbroken or just being fucked over or cheated on or whatever it may be. And so then later when you do get into another relationship or, like, whatever it may be, you just find yourself doing weird fucking things because you don't want to get hurt, and you're going to do everything you possibly can to ensure that you don't get hurt. And that, I also think, is a sign of, like, hey, maybe you need to heal a little bit more from certain things, and that's totally okay. Like, you know, like, that is expected, especially if you've been through a lot or been through some of the situations that Shannon and I have been in.
So what makes you work through that? Because I think in the past there are some things that you probably, like, have never been honest with yourself about or other people about, but now you're working on trying to be more honest with people around you as well as yourself about, like, what you're going through and how you're feeling about things and how you're feeling about people. So how did you get from A to B? Like, what made you decide to be honest with yourself?
Like, in this situation, or just, like, in general in my whole life?
We can start with just, like, this situation, because that will probably give us a glimpse into other situations.
I think that a lot of that stems from trust. Like, this is so tough. I think that entering into the situation, I was, like, pretty open-minded, and I've always kind of done this thing, at least for, like, the past few years, where I, like, assume the worst in people, or just I assume they're gonna hurt me, like, right off the bat. Like, they are guilty until proven innocent, right? Like, no matter what, they're gonna do something, and they're gonna hurt me, they're gonna fuck me over, like, it's just not gonna end well. And going into this situation, I think part of it is that, like, I already knew this person, and I've known him for a while. And so it's like, I know that he's, like, a good person, and, like, all my friends really like him and trust him. And so I think that really helped. I think when you're, like, jumping into something with a brand new person, that shit's scary as fuck. Cause, like, you don't know their, like, where they've been. Like, you don't know, like, anything about them. Like, it's just, like, that's scary. But I think I was lucky because, like, I'd been around him a lot, and, like, everyone loved him. So, like, that, like, initially I was like, okay. So I think I had an open mind going in. I was like, okay, I don't know what's going to happen. Like, maybe it does end badly. Maybe I do get hurt, but there's nothing signifying that. So I'm just going to have an open mind and see what happens. So I think that, and that's hard. That's a really hard thing to do. So for me, that, like, actively took, that was, like, an everyday thing of, like, okay, like, this shitty thing happened in your last relationship. That doesn't mean it's going to happen in this one. That doesn't mean it's going to happen in this situation or on this day or whatever. Like, just, like, have an open mind. And I did that over and over again, and that really helped. And obviously there was days where I did struggle, and I was kind of like, fuck, like, I'm like, I want to push him away, or I want to put, like, up defense mechanisms, I want to put a wall up. And I did that sometimes, but it didn't do me any good. It just, like, hurt me and hurt him. Mm-hmm. And once I started, like, learning that, I felt like a fucking dog learning tricks. Like, I swear to God, like, it was just like, I don't know, like, it was just oh wait, no, like, if I do this thing that's not good, like, I don't get a treat. Like, that's, like, how it felt. And I kind of just started, like, learning these, like, little things every single day. And I just like kept getting like proven wrong from like my like default mindsets, I guess. And so when that happens, it helps you kind of break out of, you know, wanting to like lie about things or not be honest with yourself. But I still did it.
Right. Because it's habit. Okay, so essentially, like, what you did to be more honest with yourself and your feelings and people around you is you were, frankly, more observant of the situation at hand and, like, how you were feeling. And you also, like, it's a simple realization, but understanding that you acting that way was, like, harming you, like, in the long run. It was that. Like, that was harming you in the long term. It was harming, like, your relationships. And so just kind of, like, being more aware, I guess, like, being more self-aware.
Yeah, I think that was a huge thing. And I think I haven't been very self-aware in past relationships. Like, I will be the first to say that, like, admit this, but, like, I have, like, been in relationships where I've treated people really shitty because I wasn't being self-aware, or I wasn't communicating because I wasn't being self-aware. So I think that in this, I was actively like, Lauren, be more self-aware. Like, just, like, be aware of how you're talking, what you're talking about, how you're communicating to this guy, to your friends about it, things like that. So I think that was really a game changer for me. But also we need to keep in mind that this is like 5 years in the making, right? Mm-hmm. Like, it took me so long in so many different situations to like get to a point where I could do this, which sucks. Like, it's not like I wish that right out of the gate I could have just been like totally fine. But it took a lot of healing, and it took a lot of self-growth and self-reflection. And it also took a lot of bad situations for me to realize what I really do want from a guy, what I really do want from a relationship, what I value, what I want to prioritize, and what I don't want. And so despite like all the bad, I feel like I'm kind of grateful for it because I've learned so much about who I am as a person and what I need as a person. And so now that I know that, in a very roundabout way, which is unfortunate, but also I can go into this situation and I know exactly what I need and I know exactly what I want. And I realized that I was getting all those things. And I think that was like a huge thing for me. And also,
like you're getting those now.
Yes.
In your current.
Yeah.
Whatever you want to call it.
Situation. Yeah. I totally forgot what I was talking about. Wow, isn't that so crazy how like your entire thought loop can just like completely leave your mind? Stream of consciousness just
good night
gets flushed down the fucking toilet. And then, okay, so once I kind of got to this point of understanding that I was getting what I actually needed and I was actually being like treated so well and exactly like how I should be treated, I was like, well, Lauren, why the fuck are you putting up like defense mechanisms? Why are you ever pushing this person away? Like, what are you doing? Like, this is the best guy you've ever been with, the healthiest situation you've ever been in. Like, don't fuck that up. Like, just like don't. And I think that being more aware of that has helped me a lot. And like our last episode we recorded like a few weeks ago. Mm-hmm. And then like the past couple weeks I've been very, very self-aware and I've been very aware of like how good my situation is. And it's like completely changed everything. Like, I stopped putting up defense mechanisms. I stopped pushing him away. I stopped being like stupid about things. I just like started communicating how I was feeling and what I needed, and like literally changed everything. Like, I feel like my life has changed completely in the past
for the better.
2 weeks for the better.
Okay.
Yay.
That's good. Allowing your like letting down those walls and those like, you know, vulnerability kind of gates that you had for yourself, like, it's bringing positive things. So if you're someone out there who has a similar situation to Lauren where you're like afraid to be vulnerable or afraid to be honest with yourself and others, like, try just for like a week or two being honest with yourself, being more aware of, you know, what your actions, like whether they're causing harm or good in your relationships. And most likely the outcome is going to be positive. But just like try it, right? Like give it a shot.
And I think that obviously that's much easier said than done. But if there's like a piece of advice that I could give, and I hate that it took me so long to like do these types of things, but even just like taking a few minutes a day to reflect on yourself. Some people like to just like have like mindfulness time or like meditate or like things like that. But just like take a few minutes where you're not surrounded by people, like you're in your own space, you're not doing anything, and like just like think about your day or think about your week. Like, what are things that have been going well? What are things that haven't been going well? And if this is in like a friendship or a relationship, whatever it may be, like reflect on those things that have happened. And like if something made you upset or if something made you happy, like, okay, what was that? And how can you communicate that to your partner or to your friend? Like, it doesn't have to be something super serious. You can start off small. And I think that like by starting off small, by just communicating little things of like, oh, like, you know, like this one thing happened yesterday. It was like not really a big deal, but like, I don't know why it kind of annoyed me. Like, can we talk about it? Boom. Or like, hey, this thing happened the other day. It made me so happy. And I just wanted to say like, I'm really grateful for you. Boom. Like, it doesn't have to be some huge fucking conversation that's super stressful or just like really heightens your anxiety and you're like thinking about it all day long. Like, it can just be like the little things. And then if you keep practicing that over and over again, I feel like it'll help you have those bigger, more important conversations when the time comes or if those are necessary. But I think that's what helped me a lot is that I started having these smaller conversations, not just with like this guy, but like also with my friends. And that made me realize like, holy shit, like I can be honest and vulnerable with these people. Like, they care so much about me. They're not going to shame me for it. They're not going to make me feel shitty for having fucking feelings. Like, they love that. And then they feel more connected to me. And so that helped me a lot. And then that's helped me build up to having much more serious conversations. And like, we can also talk about those, like having those conversations of like, hey, I've been assaulted. Like, this is really hard for me. Can we talk about it? You know, like you have to build up to that. Sometimes you can't just like go out of the gates.
Yeah. I guess like, so in our first episode, if you haven't watched it, go check it out. But we talked a lot about like having sort of like rape or sexual assault flashbacks during sex with new partners. And something we kind of realized is we didn't really discuss like, how do you tell your partner or someone you're sleeping with or just somebody close to you that you've been sexually assaulted, and kind of like, when is the right time? How do you know? And like the implications. And is implications like what happens after? I'm like forgetting what implications means. I used a big word and I wasn't ready for it. But anyways, kind of like what can happen after you tell someone and what that might mean. Because as we were saying, you know, being vulnerable with someone is giving someone the power to have this information and potentially hurt you with it. So I would say like telling somebody you've been sexually assaulted can really, like the way they respond can really affect like whether you want to tell someone again, how close you are with that person in the future. Because if they have a bad reaction, like why would you want to talk to anyone else about it in the future? Like, you know what I mean? That was my thought. That was it. That was the end of it.
Yeah, and I think that it's so fucking scary because you do fear their reaction. Like, oh, are they going to judge me? Are they going to shame me? Like, what's going to happen? And that's totally valid. It's totally valid. But I also think that like I said earlier, that's a huge indication of the type of person this person is.
Yeah.
Like, are they someone who's going to sit there and like listen and just like try to get an understanding of where you're coming from and your perspective? Are they going to have a lot of empathy for you? Are they going to ask you questions that rub you the wrong way? And you're kind of like, whoa, like that's not what you should be saying right now. I really do think that it's very important how people respond. Obviously, people don't know exactly how to respond. There's not like a right way to respond that's going to make everything feel good and better automatically. But I do think it's very valid. And you know what? If you tell someone something like this and they respond badly, you just fucking learn that that person should not be in your goddamn life. You just did yourself a favor, frankly.
Yeah. But so like, I don't know if we're on the same page of like, are we talking about telling a person you're in a relationship with, or are we talking about just telling like someone of the opposite gender or whoever like you sleep with? Because I think that's the hardest one. Like, in my opinion, I think it's the hardest to be vulnerable with someone that you're like in a relationship with about being sexually assaulted versus like friends. It
is a lot harder, especially like when you're telling like your girlfriends. Because a lot of them half the time are like, oh yeah, me too. And you're like, oh,
yeah,
fuck, like, that's awful.
Like, they can relate to it a lot.
Right.
Whereas, like, a lot of responses that I've received when I've told men, so I've told...
She's counting on her fingers.
I think I've told now 4 partners so far. And 2 of them, wait, let me think about this. Sorry. Yeah? Here. Yeah, 4. And 2 of those people were like actual boyfriends. One person was someone that, frankly, I was dating for like 2 years. I just wasn't telling myself that I was. And the biggest response that I usually got was either major fear of like they were so afraid that they were going to put me in that same situation or harm me, or a lot of them are like super tentative to even like ask questions about it. And I like, it's not saying that I wanted questions, but I welcomed questions. Like if you're telling someone, like if you're somebody telling your partner that you've been sexually assaulted and they're afraid to ask questions, but they're also afraid of like putting you in a scenario that's going to give you a flashback or make you uncomfortable, then like it's going to be hard to, I guess, be like good in the future, if that makes sense. Like you need to create a space for them to ask questions. And so like be open to this person asking you questions. Be okay with maybe the questions are a little bit uncomfortable, but if there's someone who is genuine, know that like it's coming from a place of just like trying to protect you in the future. In turn, if you are the person being told by your partner that you've been sexually assaulted, or that was confusing. Like if you're the person hearing that your partner has been assaulted, like how do you respond to that?
Fuck if I know.
Yeah, because I've never been on that other end of it.
Yeah.
But I think the best thing to do is to ask the questions that you have. Be kind. I hate when people say like, I'm so sorry for your loss, or I'm so sorry that you've been assaulted. But that's what you have to say. Like you have to say, I'm sorry. That fucking blows. But so if you're on the receiving end of this information, like try to imagine what that would be like. Like I had a conversation with your ex-boyfriend one time, and he was having like a hard time understanding why sexual assault was like so bad. And what I said was like, think about a time when you've been like really powerless. Like maybe somebody was hurting your friend, or like your mom was in a car accident and like she was in the hospital and there's nothing you could do. Like those times, I don't know if that can be heard. There's a car horn. It's the city. But like think about a time when you've been really, really helpless. That's what that's like the only emotion that I can try to like get someone else to identify with, to understand what it's like to be sexually assaulted. It's not the same, like it's not an equal, but it's something that is similar that most people could probably understand. So, long story short, if you are someone on the receiving end of this information, like try to put yourself in their shoes, and do that by identifying emotions that are similar to sexual assault, and like sit in them with that person who's telling you this information.
Yeah, and I think, honestly, this sounds weird, but just being curious, too, like, that shows you want to understand. Maybe you can't personally understand, but you want to try as best as you possibly could. And obviously, it can be really hard to know, like, what are the right questions to ask, what are the wrong questions to ask. And I think, at least for me, having just, like, the opportunity, like, having someone sit there and be like, okay, do you want to talk to me further about what happened? Do you want to talk to me further about like X, Y, or Z? Like how are you feeling right now? Like, I think that just taking that step of being like, is it okay if we talk about this? Do you want to talk about this? And not being like, oh, what happened? You know, because like you probably like don't really want to talk about what exactly happened, right? But just knowing that the opportunity is there if you did want to talk about more details or like get into it more, knowing that that person is open to having those conversations with you, I think is really important. And just knowing that is a safe space for you to be in.
So when is it like the time, do you think, to tell someone about this? Like, how do you know that this person is someone that you should or want to tell? We're talking specifically in like kind of a relationship setting, whether that's like boyfriend, girlfriend, partner, situationship, someone you're hooking up with, like.
Yeah. I obviously it will be different for everyone else, and I can like try to talk about, you know, my current situation and why I thought it was important to tell him. I think that initially, because he is a friend of both of ours, he like already knew that something like this had happened. And so it wasn't like a total shock, right? So there was already that, which does make it easier. But I think that like just after like a little while of us hanging out and like having fun, I like genuinely did trust him, at least on like a friend level. And I was having some anxiety when it would be like, oh, like, let's go to bed. Mm-hmm. And I'd be like, oh, like, I think there's like that initial pressure of like, oh, I should sleep with him because like that's what you're supposed to do in these situations, which is just, I think, like a societal thing. Like he wasn't putting that pressure on me in any way, shape, or form at all. Like that was just a societal thing. I think that girls sometimes feel like they have to be sleeping with someone if they're like hanging out with them and like, you know, like making out with them or whatever, which is totally not true. Like do whatever the fuck you want, whatever feels good for you. But I think that I kind of had that pressure like on my mind in a way. And then I was also just like kind of anxious because it can be harder for me to be physically vulnerable, and especially with someone that I really like. I've definitely like hooked up with people and it's been like kind of random, but it wasn't like I was like, oh, I want to be dating you or anything. And that was kind of different, but I knew that I liked this guy and I knew I cared about him. And I think he could tell that I was having a lot of anxiety around like bedtime and things like that. And we had like pretty deep conversations about other things before where he did really create a safe space for me, and I feel like I created a safe space for him. So I think for me that was a huge thing, is that like we like built up to having important conversations and vulnerable conversations, and building up to those I started realizing like, oh, this is a really good person that like I can trust with this information, that I can be vulnerable with. And I learned that over time. And so when it got to the point where like my anxiety was just like, it was just like a little bit too much. And that anxiety was not stemming from him at all. Like he was not doing anything wrong. Like that's just like from my past. And so my anxiety was like kind of ramping up. I trusted him. We had conversations about other important things. And I remember like, you know, talking to you before, and I was like, I don't know if I should like tell him, like maybe I should tell him. Right. Like I feel like it's impacting like our time together, and like that is stressing me out. And so I think that like I like talked through it with Shannon, and after that I was like, okay, like I think that like could be a good thing. And I don't have to like go into a ton of details. I can just be like, hey, this thing happened. It can be harder for me to be physically intimate, and it just takes me some time. I like hope you understand, whatever. And so like literally like one night I was just like, hey, like can we talk? And we were just like sitting in bed, and I just like basically told him exactly what I just said. I was like, this is my situation. This is how I'm feeling. You've done absolutely nothing wrong. Like I just have to like warm up to this. And he was so sensitive to it and so open and understanding. And he like very much created a safe space for me. He didn't like try to like pry into my, you know, past or like into like all the details. He just like wanted to ensure that like I was feeling okay and that I was feeling safe. Like that was his first priority after I told him. It wasn't like, well, what happened? Like blah, blah, blah. It was like, okay, like I just want to make sure that like you feel safe with me and you feel comfortable with me. Like that's my priority. And that was his reaction. And after hearing that, I was like, okay, like this is a good fucking person, like who really, really cares about me and really cares about like how I'm feeling and ensuring that I'm feeling safe. And that was like huge for me. And I think that was also like definitely a sign of like, this is someone that like I would like to be with.
Okay. So in summary.
Yes.
Because the question was how do you know when it's like the right time to tell someone? So what I got from that was when your anxiety is like too much, whether that's like you're worried about having sex with them in general, or worried about like having some sort of like rape or assault flashback, or you're just like, it's something that you're thinking about a lot. So like the first thing is like if you're feeling anxious a lot about it, or not necessarily like this isn't in order, but just one of the things is if you can tell that you're feeling anxious a lot. So then like the second thing would be is if you've had conversations with them and they've like proven to you basically that they're someone, they've created a safe space, and that safe space has been created through other important conversations where they've responded well. So that's like the second thing. Third thing, I think if you can like see any sort of future with them, I'm not talking like marriage, kids, that whole thing. I'm just saying like if you're going to be spending more time with them more frequently, like this might be something that's good to tell them. And like that's why I ended up telling my current partner, was because I was starting to spend a lot of time with them, and I realized like I might have really bad days that are related to I'm thinking about the court process, or I'm thinking about being assaulted, or maybe it's like the sexual assault anniversary date or whatever. And I want to be able to let this person into my pain on those days. And I don't want to have to explain it to them when those days come. Like, I don't want to have to be like crying in my bed or whatever, and then being like, what's wrong? And me having to be like, I was sexually assaulted once. Like, I don't want to talk about it now because I'm already thinking about it. Like, that's not the time to tell them. The time to tell them is when you're in the right space of mind, and like when you're having just like a conversation. So yeah, when you're anxious about it or about sexual things. Yeah, so that happened with my current partner too. There was several nights where he was like, hey, do you want to come over? And it was later at night, and I kept saying no. And eventually, because he's so observant, he said, hey, like, I just want to let you know there's no pressure to do anything sex-wise. Like, I just want to hang out with you. And that like totally released all of this pressure. And I'm like, okay, I need to tell him because I'm nervous about sex things because I've been assaulted and it's a new person. And so there's this like, and that was yet another reason why I decided to tell him. But anyways, recap, if you're feeling anxious about some things, if you can see yourself spending a lot of time with this person in the future, and like you might have a bad day and you don't want to have to tell them why you're having a bad day on the bad day. And then also, if they've kind of proven, sounds really weird, but if they have shown you that they can handle more intense information in a good way.
Yeah, and I think the like whole like not having to explain yourself thing is huge. That's the biggest reason why I told my friends. Like, one being that like I felt really like alone with everything I was dealing with, but also I would have these like significantly bad days. Like, just I like couldn't do anything. I couldn't get out of bed. Like, I didn't want to go to class. Like, I didn't want to like hang out with people. And I would just like be like held up in my room, and people would be like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, where are you? Like, whatever. And I hated having to explain myself, or like I hated that like people just like didn't understand like why I was like that. So that was like a huge thing for me, was like, okay, you know what? I'm not feeling great. I've been feeling like really alone with this shit. Like, I'm going to actually talk to my friends about it. And then like once I did that, it was just like, yeah, so like if I have a bad day, like this is why I'm having a bad day. Like, I don't necessarily like want to talk about it. I just want you guys to understand that that's just like what's going on. And that alone like relieves a lot of this kind of pent up pain you get from just sitting with these things for so long, or like whatever it may be.
Right. And like we had talked about that a lot on like last episode as well. So if you want more information about like telling other people on like the different reactions after sexual assault, check out episode 2. Something I want to get into is like attachments to people after being sexually assaulted.
That's super interesting.
I formed like a really strange, I would call it, attachment to someone for like 2 years after being sexually assaulted. Like an extreme attachment. So basically, there's this guy. Okay. I met him my freshman year of college, like literally the first day of classes. It was this guy. He was like really shaggy and had glasses and kind of like super nerdy, which wasn't the type of guy that I think I was normally attracted to. But on like the first day of class, he had like made fun of like, I had an ankle boot. I just had surgery. And he like made fun of my boot, and we just like had banter really quickly. And I thought, oh, this is going to be like my first friend in college. And for about,
LOL.
for like, let's see, school starts in August, like September. Like for about 3 months, we we're like best friends. Like we hung out like all the time. We had coffee all the time. We'd hang out in between class. He was like kind of like not a bad boy, but he's like, what do you mean you've never skipped a class? Like I had never skipped a class until I met this man. And anyways, he was just really fun and like super different. And we had literally nothing in common. Like nothing in common. He was like a stoner. He was like super groovy and very much like just do what you want. Like feel the vibes.
Yeah, welcome
and
to
like
fucking CU Boulder.
we like mushrooms. This is before CU.
Oh, what? Oh my God, you're right.
Yeah.
I forgot you didn't start at CU. Oh
Yeah.
my God.
It was at the different school. And he was a lot of fun. Like although we had nothing in common, like when I say nothing, I really mean nothing. Like except for the fact that we both like EDM music, but at the time, I didn't even really like it yet. Like I wasn't into the wubs or anything. But we had a blast together and we like had so much fun. And there was definitely this like weird like tension of some sort. And like we had kissed and like some things like that had happened. But the base of it was we were like friends. And then I was sexually assaulted. And it was really weird because it was like the morning after I had been assaulted, he texted me and said like, hey, or no. It was when I was at the hospital. He texted me and was like, hey, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, why? Or something like that. And he's like, well, I can see your Snapchat location. You're at the hospital. And this is at like, really late at night. So it was just kind of a weird thing. Like, oh, he had seen my location and he also like checked up on me to make sure I was okay. And I had said just like, yeah, like I'm okay, like blah, 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 just something happened. That's all. Like I was super vague, didn't give any details about the fact that I'd been sexually assaulted or anything like that. Anyways, so the next day I'm staying at a friend's house and like I had said, I had never told him what had happened. At that point in time, I hadn't told him what had happened. And he shows up to my friend's house and he has these bright orange flowers and he had these like this mint chocolate, a mint chocolate chip chocolate thing. Okay.
Okay.
And he gave me like the biggest hug in the world. And I'm not a hugger. I do not like physical touch.
That's true. I think Shannon and I have hugged 3 times in our entire lives.
Yeah, like not a hugger. And he gave me this big hug. And I just remember feeling so empty. And then there was this hug. And it just like made me feel like totally safe. And like everything was okay when it so wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
And he just knew. Like he was like, I know what happened. I didn't tell him. He was like, I just knew. And eventually I told him the story and everything, all the details. But that was the beginning of this 2-year incredibly tumultuous, like up and down with him. And I was so afraid to ever let him go because he was the first one that made me truly feel okay after being sexually assaulted.
Yeah.
And like I said, nothing in common. Yeah, we had fun together, but like there's limits to the fun and like the length of time you can, I think, be close to someone when you have like absolutely nothing that you can bond over. But what was holding us together was that I was so terrified to let him go. Like I couldn't, because that would mean that the one, like I felt like he was the only person in this world that could make me feel okay. And if I let him go, that I wouldn't be safe. That was my story. That was my horrible attachment. And I have like so much more to talk about on that, but I need to give some time
Okay.
to you.
Well, I was going to ask a follow-up question and just ask, like, when you did cut that off, how did that make you feel?
Oh, God. Well, there was a lot of times where, like, I tried to cut things off or he tried to cut things off. And there was a time within the 2 years where I was actually in a relationship and him and I weren't talking. But that was only, like, 5 or 6 months long. About 5 months. But so there was one night where I had sex and I kicked a guy out because I had, like, a really bad rape flashback. And I just, like, told him, like, you need to leave. I didn't explain why. I just kicked him out. And this is the time we're going to call this man that I have an attachment to. We're going to call him Shaggy Boy. Now, it's not meant to be mean. It's just how
he had,
I like
long
picture
hair.
him. He was
like,
yeah, long curly hair, kind of scruffy.
Yeah.
But so during this time when I kicked this other man out that I was hooking up with, Shaggy Boy and I were not talking. We were in one of our like bad times. We weren't talking. And I remember I'm like sitting there, I'm staring at the ceiling, I'm shaking, I'm crying after I've kicked this man out. I'm having like horrible, probably one of the worst rape flashbacks I've probably ever had. And after like I had calmed down a little bit, I texted Shaggy Boy. I'm like, I need you right now. And he's like, I can't. And I called him and he didn't answer.
Right.
And I was becoming psycho. I'm calling him, texting him, like all this because I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to function without you. And
interesting.
That was the first time where he didn't show up when I needed him. And he wasn't there. And I was alone. And I was left to like make myself feel safe. And for one, it created probably one of the strongest rifts between us because I'm like, you weren't fucking there. You've been there all the time, and then all of a sudden you weren't when I needed you most. And I had been there for him when he needed me most. And this time, he wasn't. So that was like the initial thing. And then, truly what it was I realized that, like, I got through the night. Like, I didn't think I would, and I did. So that was that first little glimpse. And then there was just a lot of times after that where he wasn't making me feel safe anymore because of that initial thing. Like, it was like a forced response. Like, I was forced to make myself feel safe. And eventually, you know, I dated other people, and although he was kind of still in and out, like, we realized it wasn't healthy, like, mutually. It was a thing. Like, we actively had multiple conversations over, we cannot be each other's lifeline. Like, this isn't okay. And we just had to, like, force it apart. And it was awful. Like, if you had a little blankie that you would have your whole life.
Who's your emotional support dog?
Actively, yeah.
Like, literally, like, you needed something like that so badly during that time. That is who you latched onto. The second that something went wrong and he wasn't there, you're like, well, fuck, like, what do I do? Like, it's a total coping mechanism. But I think that was also probably a turning point for you, it sounds like, where you realized, like, oh shit, like, I can do this. Like,
it was a healing moment. Sure.
Yeah, like, I can feel safe on my own. Like, I, like, have the capabilities of doing that. And that's not fun. Like, that's not a fun thing to have to, like, figure out, but it's also vital.
It's necessary.
Yeah.
And I will say, I am, like, forever and ever grateful for that human. Like, I really think that if he hadn't shown up and given me the hug and given me the flowers and been there to listen for so long, like, he was really the first straight man that I opened up to about all this, and, like, really listened and was, like, passionate for me. Like, he was like, let's fucking get this guy. He needs to go to jail. Like, he was the first man who was really, like, gung-ho and on the same wavelength as me. And if he wasn't there during that, I don't think that I would have been more open to being with men in the future. Like, I think it would have been more closed off if he hadn't really shown me all of that safety right away.
Yeah.
Yeah. I still love Shaggy Boy in a different way, not in love. Love that man, though, for a lot of things.
Yeah, I think that obviously there was a lot that went on in that kind of relationship type dynamic, but the fact that you're able to look back on that and be like, you know what, like, I'm grateful. At the end of the day, like, it taught me a lot. I learned
really
a lot.
Unhealthy, frankly.
Yeah. But it sounds like you got some really necessary things out of it. And so at the end of the day, it's just really good to, like, reflect on that. I just think it's so fucking fascinating how much, like, you have changed over the past 4 years.
In a good way?
Yeah, like, I think that it's interesting to, like, watch someone go through these, like, healing processes because it's so chaotic and really painful at times, but also, like, really, really cool and, like, beautiful at times. And even just, like, seeing you open up to people or seeing you go from having this extreme pain to using it to empower you and make you feel, like, strong and resilient, and then also taking that and, like, having that in a really wonderful, like, healthy relationship that you're in now. Like, it's just, I just hope people listen to this and it's just a beacon of hope, because I know for me, like, there were days and there were nights where I, like, really thought that I couldn't keep going, you know? And it's like
you were gonna off yourself, or it was just like, hey,
no,
okay,
like it's like it's
out?
not it's more of just like you don't want to die, but you also don't want to like be alive kind of
We're
thing.
not interested in thriving, we're just interested in like surviving. Like,
Right. Like it truly is just constant. You're in survival mode for so long, and it's really easy to like lose hope or just like feel so drained and powerless. But in every like situation, every sector of your life, you can feel drained and powerless, whether that's like in friendships and relationships with your family, just everything for some reason, because you just all your energy is being put into just like trying to get through this and trying to survive. But like I think that in any story, any instant where you were like, yeah, like this happened and it just taught me that like I could make it on my own, I could figure it out, like that is just like hope for the fact that like there are going to be days like that where you are feeling alone and you feel like you can't get through this and like you need someone, you need to latch on to someone, but like you don't, like you have the strength and you have the resilience to power through, and there is light on the other side. Like there really truly is. Even if it feels like that's absolutely 100% not possible, like I promise you, like there are better things coming. And I hated hearing that. I hated hearing like, oh, everything's gonna be fine. Everything's gonna work out. Like,
really cheesy.
Like you're gonna figure out how to like talk to your friends. You're gonna figure out how to like tell your partner. Like you're gonna like work through all this, and like you're gonna feel better. You're gonna feel happier one day. Like it's always like one day. But it's like no, like actually, I swear to fucking God, like one day you will feel better. Maybe it's just a little bit. Maybe you feel better because like you got to tell your partner, you got to talk to your friend about it, and you realize that like holy shit, like this happened to me, but now I'm owning this part of my life and I can do this.
Yeah. Wow, that was really, I feel like you really got into it. That was good. I'm going to share my analogy. This is my favorite analogy. I come up with it all by myself. I would like to take credit. Now I'm going to take credit and someone's going to say like, no, that's a famous one. Anyways, in regards to like being okay is whenever you're feeling like it's not okay, things really fucking suck, like it's just bad, when things are just bad, I equate that to like think about when you're really cold, like whether you're skiing or you're building a snowman or you're just outside on a walk trying to get home from wherever and it's winter. Like think about times when you've been really cold and it feels like you're never going to be warm again, like it's just freezing and it just sucks. And then before you realize it, you're, at home with a cup of hot chocolate and a blanket, and you're warm again. You might even be hot. Like, it's just this all of a sudden you're warm, and you don't really know how you got there. You don't really remember how long it took for you to get there, but you're just okay again, and you're just warm. And that's the same thing with everything in life that takes from you. Like, sexual assault takes from you. People dying takes from you. People leaving you takes things out of you. And it's not okay until it is. And the only way that you get to being okay and you get to being warm is you just keep on fucking swimming. Your doggy paddling. You just keep going.
Yeah.
And you'll get there. And it's so cheesy and it's so like, it's gonna be like okay one day. But it's true. Like there's a reason things are cliches. They're cliches because they're real. And so many people have experienced them that they've become cliche.
Yeah. And obviously, like, it takes a lot of different things to get to that point. Like, it takes talking to your friends. It takes being vulnerable. It takes opening up to your partner and hopefully, like, having those safe spaces that you can go into. But it also takes figuring out how to create that safe space for yourself, however that may be. And, that probably will look like, going to therapy and, like, getting, like, that kind of help or just, like, reaching out to resources. I know like me and Shannon utilized a ton of different resources when we were going through this, like going to therapy, reaching out to our schools that we were at the time and utilizing the resources that they offered. And those are like all really important too, right? Like it's important to understand that you will heal personally, but it's okay to ask for those like items of help. And it's okay to ask for help from your friends, from your family, from professionals, from your school, whatever it may be.
I was thinking that this has like been a really heavy episode and our whole thing is kind of talking about this in a really like natural way and like a very honest way. So I guess like when episodes are a little bit heavier, it's simply because that's what feels the most authentic and most real, I guess. But if you are someone who's going through this, like, this is heavy shit. And I don't want everything to be heavy. Like, fucking go buy yourself a croissant. go do something that like makes you feel good. If you're listening to this and you've been through this recently, I guess. I just feel like this was really heavy, and I feel like our first episode was really fun and vibrant. And I think now as we're getting into the more of like crux of things, it's becoming heavier, and I don't want everything to seem so heavy.
Yeah.
Do you have something fun to talk about?
I don't know. I was trying to think of like a joke that I could tell, but I don't really know if I have any jokes right off the top of my head.
I don't either.
Damn. What was like the best thing that happened to you this week?
The best thing?
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of something that's not related to my boyfriend.
That's okay. It can be related to him.
But I want
He's
people
great.
to think that I have a life outside of him. You know?
This podcast is like for talking about sexual assault, for talking about relationships, for talking about this type of shit. So that's just like on brand.
Okay. Well, my boyfriend, he wrote me a letter.
Oh.
Which is really sweet. And although we live in the same place, I liked that he wrote me a letter. And essentially, he was talking about how in the past, he's written a lot of letters for his like girlfriends because he felt like he didn't know how to communicate some things face to face. But he said with me, we communicate so well that he hasn't needed to write letters, but he said this like very cute thing of, you know, because we're such good communicators, that shouldn't be like punished because we're good communicators. I should be writing you hundreds of letters, and like it was very sweet and very cute.
That's so cute.
I would say that was a good thing. I got a chicken quesadilla last night from Illegal Pete's, which is like
oh my god, I also got a chicken quesadilla last night.
From Illegal Pete's?
No.
Place is dank. Love it.
Yeah, so good.
What was
Sponsor
the
us.
best thing that happened to you?
Honestly, this week was like really shit because I just had so much work to do, and that's all I was doing, and I didn't have a lot of time for myself. But yesterday, I had some time, so I got to go to dinner with one of our really good friends who I haven't been able to like hang out with him or talk with him for a while just because both of our lives have been really crazy, and he's going through a lot and I've been going through a lot, and so it's just really nice to like sit down with him and just like he ranted for like a really long time and I ranted for a really long time, and then we like analyzed our situations and like tried to give each other advice.
Therapize.
And like I was like drinking like a blood orange margarita during this and like eating my quesadilla, and it was just like really great. And I've been feeling very stressed out this week just because I have so much on my plate, but like automatically like my like headache went away and I just like felt so much more relaxed, and it just felt so good to like get all this stuff off my chest. But it was also great that he could finally like open up to me and talk to me about what's going on in his life, because I know he's been like, you know,
Dealing with a lot.
And so he said that he felt so much better after like talking and hanging out. So it was just like overall like really, really nice, and like I really missed him, so that was really great. And I'm very like grateful for that time that I had with him. So
wow, yours was like so much more substantive.
But yours is
maybe this is like, okay, we're gonna bundle it all up together. This next week you should call someone you haven't called in a while, or hang out with someone that you haven't hung out with in a while, or text someone you haven't texted in a while, like someone you care about. You should find someone to unload some of your baggage onto. That's really what the real
yes.
Well, I'm serious.
No, like talk to your fucking friends about shit. Like yeah. I cannot like stress enough how much that helps. Like I like literally had a headache for 3 days straight. The second I talked to one of my friends about like my week and just what was going on, my headache went away. Like It was insane.
Well, it's like that whole thing. If I was carrying 20 pounds of luggage and you're carrying 80 pounds of luggage, you can give me 20 of your pounds or 40 of your pounds because I have less baggage than you. So like spread out the baggage. Not everyone, like not all of your friends have enough space for your baggage, I guess. But it's that thing of like, give it to other people because like they might be able to hold some of it for you.
Yeah.
You don't have to hold it all yourself.
Exactly.
So talk to someone you haven't talked to in a while that you care about. Share some of your shit with them or someone you care about. Or
Write someone a fucking letter.
Write someone a letter.
Make their goddamn year.
And get a chicken
quesadilla and a margarita.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Leave it at that.
Well, thanks, guys, for listening to our podcast.
Yeah.
And
catch you on the flip side.
Catch you on the flip side. Cheers.
Cheers.
Should we like do a little cheers?
No.
No.